It was undoubtedly incredible how much Goku's life had changed in the last year. Everything happened very fast. First, after living his entire life on Earth, he discovered that he was an alien, specifically a Saiyan. Without a doubt, that revelation was shocking, but not as pleasant as one might expect for someone who had just learned of his origins, since the first impression he got of his race through his brother Raditz was hardly the best. Later on, that same bad impression would be reinforced by the horrible acts of cruelty displayed by Nappa and Vegeta, with many of his friends having died before he could return from his training with King Kai to save whoever was left alive, which wasn't many. Although by that point he had accepted and even appreciated the huge genetic advantages that his race's biology offered for becoming much stronger, especially realizing it during his roughly 6-day journey to Planet Namek, where his power grew more in those 6 days than it had in the first 25 years of his life. All that didn't change the fact that the hatred, resentment, and disgust he felt toward his race was immense, seeing the cruelty that Raditz, Nappa, and Vegeta were capable of. If even Raditz, who was his own blood, could be that cruel and evil, he couldn't imagine how the rest of his race might be, much less his parents. And although Goku was pure of heart, not wishing death or destruction on anyone, he couldn't help thinking that, deep down, if most of the Saiyans had died, maybe it was for the best for the rest of the universe's inhabitants. Who knew how he would have turned out if he hadn't hit his head as a child? His perception and understanding of the Saiyans would have remained that way if not for an incredible and unexpected moment that took place after he arrived on Planet Namek, fought with Ginyu, lost his body, got it back, and then healed from his injuries as a result. That moment in question happened when he reached the place where his friends, Son, and Vegeta were fighting against Frieza, with the latter having utterly defeated and shattered Vegeta inside after the terrible beating he'd given him before Goku arrived. Vegeta, in his final moments, opened up to Goku in a way he never thought a cold and cruel man like Vegeta could, telling him all his trauma with Frieza, his story, his suffering, the sorrow he felt for losing what was rightfully his planet, his race, his people, his father. All that they lost, all that he lost as the Saiyan Prince. He explained it was all Frieza's fault, who had humiliated him, destroyed him, and broken his pride as a warrior. And because of everything he'd suffered, even though they were enemies, Vegeta, in his last breath of desperation, begged Kakarot to avenge him, his race, and his people by finally defeating Frieza, and by becoming the Super Saiyan his race needed to end that cycle of humiliation and torture under the domination of the terrible Emperor. After that audacious request to someone who was theoretically his enemy, Vegeta finally drew his last breath, succumbing to the wounds inflicted by Frieza's torture. For some reason he couldn't quite explain in words, Goku felt deeply moved by Vegeta's words, far more affected by his death than he would have expected. Not really by Vegeta the individual, after all he was a horrible person, but by what he represented, the symbolism that now, as far as Goku knew, he was the last pure Saiyan alive in the entire universe. As a final act of respect, from one warrior to another, Goku buried Vegeta, dedicating a few final words in understanding of the suffering he bore, and later swearing to Frieza that in the name of all the races he had harmed, in the name of all the Namekians he had killed, and even in the name of all the Saiyans whose chance at changing and becoming better he had taken away, he, Goku, also known as Kakarot, a Saiyan raised on Earth, swore he would defeat Frieza. Everyone there was surprised by Goku's words, especially hearing him accept his Saiyan name. It was astonishing that he referred to himself as Kakarot. At that moment, Frieza recognized that face, the face of a warrior unafraid of death, determined to see his fight through to victory no matter what, recalling that Saiyan who resisted him and fought to the end before he destroyed Planet Vegeta. And the Emperor realized that Saiyan was surely the father of this Goku standing before him. From there, the legendary fight between Goku and Frieza unfolded exactly the same as in the original story, without the slightest change, even after Goku attained the legendary Super Saiyan form. However, when Goku was about to introduce himself in an imposing and proud manner to a terrified Frieza, instead of saying, "I am the Super Saiyan Son Goku," he said, "I am the Super Saiyan Goku and Kakarot." After his epic battle against the Emperor, which Goku won, believing the tyrant to be dead after his incompetence and continuing to fight even after losing half his body, Goku managed to escape Planet Namek's explosion by boarding a Ginyu Force space pod he had found. But the margin for him to get in that special pod and power it up to escape the planet was very tight. so tight that the craft almost veered off course after being hit by the planet's explosion as it fled into space. Because of that, for a few moments, due to the explosion's blast, the pod became unstable and started shaking violently in all directions, with a helpless and exhausted Goku suffering severe motion sickness from all that shaking inside the capsule. Until, in a careless moment, he hit his head, adding to the extreme fatigue and injuries he'd already suffered. In the end, that caused him to pass out from exhaustion and the pain in his head from striking the inner shell of the capsule he was riding in. During his journey to Planet Yardrat, while he lay in a coma, Goku dreamed of something. Or rather, it felt like a memory, a blurred and confusing memory that gradually turned into several memories. These were memories of him as a small baby, confined in an incubation pod. Bit by bit, as the hours went by, reliving those memories, he came to understand that the people he saw outside his incubator were his parents, Bardock and Gine. Now he remembered. He remembered when they gave him the name Kakarot as well, and he even recalled a moment when Raditz visited him. Raditz didn't seem at all like the horrible and cruel person he would become in the future. All those recollections ended with the last of them, Bardock placing him in a space pod, and together with his mother, they said goodbye to him, sending him to Earth. It was an extremely frightening and painful moment for him, but he could see through the glass while his pod ascended beyond the planet's atmosphere that his mother was crying, devastated at having to send her son away. It was confusing for him to remember this. Goku had thought that all Saiyans without any restriction were terrible monsters, thinking that he alone was the exception because of his head injury. But now he understood, seeing his mother's sweetness and affection, that not all Saiyans were cruel, and therefore Saiyans did not necessarily have to be cruel. It was after this realization that the Saiyan finally awoke from his coma to find himself on a strange, unique planet, carried by several small, bizarre creatures, the Yardrashians. From there, everything proceeded normally again according to the story, but now Goku had a completely different perspective about himself and his race. He'd remembered all the memories he lost when he was a baby. He remembered everything: his planet, his race, his name, his brother when he was a little kid, and most importantly, his parents. Raditz was wrong. He was never sent to Earth to destroy it and conquer it. He was only sent there by his parents so he would survive Planet Vegeta's destruction at Frieza's hands. As the months went by, while Goku learned instant transmission from Master Pibara, he also reflected on all these memories and new understanding of his race, everything he had discovered about his past, and having remembered just how much his parents loved him, as well as the fact that Raditz wasn't always the monster Goku knew as an adult. Goku gradually began to think, if evil among Saiyans wasn't intrinsic, it meant it was possible for them to be redeemed, for them to change if they were given the chance. Now he felt that maybe what happened to them at Frieza's hands had been an injustice. Little by little, the idea formed in his mind that perhaps someday he could bring them back to life and give them a second chance. Time continued passing, and eventually the moment came for Goku to return to Earth, especially when, to his utter astonishment, he sensed that Frieza was still alive and was now heading to Earth as well, most likely to take revenge, accompanied by another key very similar to his own. Hastening to board the repaired space capsule provided by the Yardrashians and thanking them for all their help, as well as thanking Master Pibara for everything he taught him, Goku considered using instant transmission if necessary to protect Earth. But upon sensing a powerful key very similar to his own utterly dwarfed Frieza's and his father's before destroying them completely, and since this key didn't emanate any evil or malice at heart, Goku decided to relax and enjoy the journey to Earth without teleporting, which would take him another 3 hours before arriving. When he finally landed on Earth, he was surprised and puzzled to see all his friends waiting for him, perfectly aware of where he was going to land, something not even he knew for sure, not exactly being an experienced pilot. He was quickly introduced to the young man who defeated Frieza and who, by all appearances, was also a Super Saiyan, and Goku went off to speak with him in private. That young man revealed to Goku that his name was Trunks and that he came from the future, explaining the entire reason behind his journey in time: the androids, the death of all the warriors at their hands, and Goku's heart disease preventing him from participating in those future battles. But what struck Goku the most from all that information was the name of Trunks' father, who was none other than Vegeta himself, and that, along with Bulma, they had Trunks, something that astonished Goku greatly. Although Trunks didn't see what that had to do with the androids, Goku asked more about how Vegeta was in the future before he died, and how much he had changed since the day he first arrived on Earth. Trunks answered as best he could, based on his mother's limited information about his father in the future. Goku was still surprised by the tremendous change Vegeta could undergo, since Goku knew very well that his best friend Bulma would never put up with someone like him if she hadn't seen something special in him, something beyond the brutality and bloodthirst he showed everyone when they first met. This further reinforced his earlier reflections that indeed Saiyans were not innately evil, and that they could change if given the right chance and context. Finally, he knew what to do with all that information, thinking it would be a great opportunity for the future and the android threat. Trunks departed after answering all of Goku's questions, wishing them luck in preparing for the androids and saying he'd try to come back in 3 years to help. From there, after Trunks' departure back to the future, Goku interacted with his friends, where with Piccolo's help, since Piccolo had overheard their conversation, they told everyone what was going to happen in the future and about the androids, of course. As in the original story, Bulma proposed simply using the Dragon Balls to locate Dr. Gero and his lab, destroying the androids before they were activated or maybe even created. But naturally, with the stubborn, prideful nature of the warriors, especially the Saiyans like Goku and Vegeta, they refused to use that solution. Instead, they decided to take advantage of this foreknowledge to train as hard as possible over the next 3 years. However, this is where one of the biggest changes to the original story occurred. While all the other human warriors left, Goku asked Vegeta and Bulma to stay a bit longer, as he needed both of their help and opinions. Goku explained everything he had been thinking for the last 1.5 years since the events on Namek. How he had regained his memories from before hitting his head, how he realized his parents were good people and very different from the rest of the Saiyans, and even Raditz wasn't so horrible when he was a child. In essence, after spelling out all those reflections and reasoning, Goku asked Bulma for the Dragon Radar so he could gather all the Dragon Balls and revive the Saiyans, which Bulma and Piccolo considered sheer madness, while Gohan and Vegeta weren't sure what to think. Goku told them that in the end, the Saiyans deserved a second chance. After all, that was exactly what Vegeta had lamented when he died at Frieza's hands on Namek. Vegeta, embarrassed to recall that vulnerable moment when he opened up to Kakarot, telling him all his grief and pain over losing everything because of Frieza, listened while Goku also asked Vegeta if, when he came to Earth with Nappa, he had been stronger at that point than any Saiyan alive on Planet Vegeta before its destruction. Vegeta confirmed that yes, he had already been the most powerful Saiyan in his race's known history ever since childhood, surpassing his own father, who had been the second strongest on Planet Vegeta. Therefore, Goku pointed out that even if everything went wrong, the revived Saiyans would be extremely weak in comparison, and any of them could easily defeat them if they tried to attack. In the end, everyone begrudgingly agreed to Goku's idea, and although Vegeta wouldn't admit it in front of everyone, he too was happy and excited to see his race revived. The process, however, wasn't instantaneous, because at that point, Shenron could only grant one wish per summoning, and then they had to wait a year to make another wish. They couldn't revive the Saiyans without first reconstructing Planet Vegeta, so Goku first gathered the Dragon Balls to ask Shenron to restore Planet Vegeta to the exact state it had been in before Frieza destroyed it. Afterward, he went to see Kami to ask if it was possible to remove the limitation so people who had died more than a year ago could still be revived. Kami affirmed that it was possible, though he was entirely against the idea of reviving the Saiyans. But at the same time, he said it would be hypocritical of him to pretend he didn't understand Goku. After all, he himself would have given anything centuries ago to know who he was and where he came from. If he and Piccolo had been able to rediscover their origins and have living Namekians to visit and learn from whenever they wanted, then Goku deserved the same with his race. Finally, Kami removed the limitation that allowed only those who had died within the last year to be revived. Thus, after another year of waiting, they gathered all the Dragon Balls again to finally revive the Saiyans. Obviously, in that span of time, everyone had already begun training for the android threat, and during that period, Goku told all his friends about his plan to revive his race. Naturally, it was very poorly received by everyone at first, though they eventually relented even if they didn't like the idea. Overall, at that point, the only ones who were excited about it were Goku, Vegeta, and Gohan. Goku and Vegeta each had their own reasons for feeling excited, while Gohan was simply thrilled at the prospect of meeting his grandparents, especially since his father assured him they weren't as bad as everyone might have imagined, based on the memories he recovered from before he arrived on Earth. Thus, with everyone gathered at Capsule Corporation, where they also learned of Bulma's pregnancy by Vegeta, they summoned Shenron. And so, Goku asked Shenron to revive all the Saiyans who died the day Frieza destroyed Planet Vegeta. Even the dragon, who was usually indifferent to the wishes people made, asked Goku nervously if he was sure he didn't want something else. But after a bit of insistence, the worried dragon finally agreed to grant the wish, then left nervously, thinking about how terrible it was to bring back warriors as bloodthirsty as the Saiyans once were. Everyone was confused, as they'd never seen Shenron so anxious. At last, Goku could sense the Saiyans' ki on Planet Vegeta, and he could teleport there with whoever wanted to accompany him. However, with the gravity 10 times that of Earth, it wasn't something most of the group were used to, so only the strongest could go on this first trip. Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, and Piccolo. The four of them clung to Goku so he could use instant transmission to travel to Planet Vegeta along with all the Saiyans. In just an instant, they found themselves in the middle of a village on Planet Vegeta, surrounded by Saiyans in a panic, not understanding what was happening to them. Many had gone completely insane during their time in Hell, unable to grasp how they were alive again. Gohan had a hard time standing upright due to the intense gravity, having never trained under increased gravity before. But thanks to his massive power, far above any Saiyan on Planet Vegeta, he quickly adapted and endured that gravity, though he was better off not trying to fight or move too much under those conditions until he could train for it. Vegeta took on the role of tour guide, giving them more context about Saiyan society, where they were, and how villages on the planet were distributed according to class. The place they had arrived in was a village for low-class Saiyans, while off in the distance they could see King Vegeta's castle. The fortress and its surroundings were where the high-class and elite Saiyans lived. Eventually, Vegeta left Goku and the others behind, heading off on his own to the castle of his father. Meanwhile, little by little, those Saiyans who regained their wits and began to process being alive again realized the strange people who had appeared in the middle of the village, especially obvious because among the man and the boy was a Namekian, which really caught everyone's attention. Suddenly, as Goku, Gohan, and Piccolo were about to leave, feeling uncomfortable with so many eyes on them, a woman off in the distance shouted the name Kakarot upon seeing them, and she leapt onto Gohan to grab him and hug him. It had only been a year since they started training, so Gohan's short hair, which had grown somewhat in that time, still wasn't as long as it would be at the end of those 3 years before the androids arrived. A sort of intermediate length, giving Gohan a hairstyle closer to his father's natural look. Gohan blushed and felt confused because this woman was hugging him so tightly and affectionately. Bardock quickly caught up to Gine, telling her to let go of the boy. Clearly this wasn't Kakarot. It was true he resembled him, and the adult looked even more similar, but that wasn't all that strange among low-class Saiyans to look alike. Besides, Kakarot was just a small baby, Bardock thought, though he wondered how his son was doing now that, for whatever reason, Frieza had vanished and the planet and their entire race had been brought back to life. Thanks to his memories, Goku immediately recognized who these people were. For the first time in ages, perhaps since Goku last saw his grandpa Gohan, he found himself at a loss for words, finding it difficult to speak and feeling emotional at seeing his parents again. But he steeled himself and explained everything. Goku stopped the Saiyan couple as they were about to walk away, telling them he knew that they had 2 sons and that the younger son had been sent to Earth to survive Planet Vegeta's destruction at Frieza's hands. Bardock and Gine were shocked to hear that, not knowing how any other Saiyan could know about it when they hadn't told a soul. Finally, with a few tears he couldn't help shedding, Goku told him he knew all that because he was that son, telling them with a big smile that although a lot of time had passed, far more than they could imagine, he was Kakarot. Bardock and Gine were stunned by this revelation, taking a few seconds to accept it because it was so confusing to see him as an adult instead of a baby. But after those few seconds, they realized it was impossible for it to be a lie. Gine returned to them and clung to Kakarot, now a grown man, hugging him with all her strength. Bardock approached his son, not hugging him but placing his hand on his shoulder, telling him how happy he was to see him all grown up, yet also demanding how in the world this could be. That was how Goku began summarizing his entire life on Earth and everything that happened up to Frieza's defeat and that of his father, as well as the Dragon Balls, which could grant any wish. Goku's parents and the other low-class Saiyans listening nearby were stunned by such news and stories. Meanwhile, Vegeta had entered the Royal Saiyan Castle, completely ignored as just another elite guard no one recognized, while the rest of the high-class warriors listened to a very agitated King Vegeta give his next orders. He couldn't understand how on earth they had all returned to life, but if that was the case, they had to seize this second chance. Maybe Frieza and King Cold were dead, and so they could claim the place of those two and rule the universe as the proud Saiyans always should have. It was then that Vegeta interrupted his father arrogantly, telling him that while it was true Frieza and King Cold were dead, they had no interest in ruling the dying empire of those two, and there were more important things to handle than dominating other worlds. King Vegeta immediately strode up in front of this person who resembled him so much yet was shorter, questioning how he dared defy the king's orders. The king told his royal guards to imprison Vegeta, but Vegeta told him not to bother, that none of them could do anything to him at this point, because he was their son, Vegeta the Fourth. That declaration of identity stunned and confused everyone in the room, as they couldn't comprehend how this grown man could be Vegeta the Fourth. King Vegeta roared angrily at him, calling it a blatant lie, since his son was only a child at the moment. Vegeta cut off his father, stating exactly what the king was about to say, that yes, his son was currently 8 years old and away on a conquest mission on another planet with Nappa and Raditz. The king was shocked that this stranger knew all that, as Vegeta again asserted that he truly was his son and that yes, he had a lot to explain. But the king had better be prepared because it was a great deal to process. Despite everything, King Vegeta, arrogant and condescending toward this supposed older son, still refused to believe it, assuming it had to be some trick or form of magic. Vegeta finally lost his patience with his father's idiocy. Vegeta exploded with rage and frustration, shouting that he had lost everything: his throne, his position, his future, his race, his planet, his father. And now that they've been resurrected, this was how his father repaid him for bringing them back? Simply put, it made him feel utterly disgusted, and he immediately recalled how he had hated his father as a child and how indifferent he'd been to the destruction of his planet and race when it happened. That frustration subconsciously contained sadness, feelings he would have considered weak for being sad that his father didn't recognize him. Obviously, that wasn't something he was about to admit at this point in the story, as Vegeta wasn't yet as mature and composed as he would be in the future. Because of all that anger, he finally transformed into a Super Saiyan right there in the middle of the castle hall, terrifying all the Saiyans present, including the king himself. Vegeta was surprised at him that at last he had also achieved the legend, and realizing what had happened, he smiled proudly and cynically at his father, asking if he had still had doubts that he was indeed his son. Right at that moment, Goku, Gohan, and Piccolo sensed Vegeta's tremendous ki spike abruptly, with Goku wondering if he'd finally done it. Indeed, moments later, part of the castle had been destroyed by Vegeta himself, sending a confused, terrified, and disoriented King Vegeta flying several kilometers away. Everyone was now utterly terrified and intimidated by the power of the Super Saiyan. Bardock and Gine were petrified with fear, wondering if that man in the sky was Prince Vegeta. Goku confirmed it, as well as confirming that he was a Super Saiyan, an assertion that astonished all who heard it in the village. But there was yet another surprise in store. Goku, filled with confidence and pride at being able to show his parents, told them that Vegeta wasn't the only one with that form, and in fact, Goku was the first to attain it, and thanks to that power, he had defeated Frieza. He then transformed before everyone, his parents, the Saiyan villagers, and the elite Saiyans who had gathered, having detected the power levels on their scouters before those scouters exploded, bursting forth in a brutal golden aura that made the entire area quake, thus showing them all that he too, Kakarot, a low-class Saiyan, had reached the Super Saiyan form, providing an interesting and inspiring contrast between Vegeta staying aloft in the sky in that form, and Goku on the ground among the low-class Saiyans in that same form, demonstrating that any Saiyan, whether low-class or high-class, could attain that transformation. Bardock was speechless. He never imagined his son could go so far when he'd been born with such a small power level. All his hopes and expectations had been met, and then some. His son was a Super Saiyan. King Vegeta, barely able to stand after being blown to that location by his son's explosion of power, could only look on in terror, pride, and envy at his son's achievement, while also feeling horrified and disgusted that a low-class Saiyan had also attained that form. Goku and Vegeta stared intensely at each other, the two immediately understanding what they wanted to do. They wanted to fight. Vegeta especially wanted to test his new Super Saiyan form and see what he was capable of now that he had attained it. Goku rose into the sky, positioning himself beside Vegeta, and shouted to the Saiyans below to watch the battle they were about to wage, for they might learn much from this power if they too wished to attain it. The two rival Saiyans assumed the same fighting stances they had used on the day they first met, thus beginning the first true battle between two Super Saiyans in history. After the entire Saiyan race had been brought back to life, and all those inhabitants had been updated on everything that had happened since they died, along with the reason for their resurrection, the extremely difficult task would begin: changing the evil mentality of most of the Saiyans while also training them to become stronger, using them as training partners for the warriors' own preparations for the arrival of the androids in less than 2 years by that point. Goku and Vegeta would mainly focus on training together now that the Prince had achieved Super Saiyan and could be a worthy rival for Goku's power. Meanwhile, Gohan and Piccolo would be in charge of training the rest of the Saiyans so that they could increase their base power, as well as develop skills and aspects in which they did not excel. For example, learning to control their power levels at will and to sense ki without needing a scouter. Although Gohan felt extremely intimidated by so many violent, aggressive, and ferocious warriors, it was, in reality, only a psychological impression. Despite his young age and the fact that he was far from reaching his father's or Vegeta's level, ironically, he was already stronger than any Saiyan from Planet Vegeta by a massive margin. Therefore, he was never in any real danger from these warriors, even if they tried to kill him for real. In any case, that was never going to happen because he was defended by Piccolo and also had moral support from Bardock and Guinea, his grandparents, with whom he began to form a very close bond, especially with his grandmother Guinea. Of course, sometimes the warriors would take breaks from their intense training on Planet Vegeta and return to Earth, even bringing Goku's parents to Earth so they could see his home and meet his wife. Chi-Chi felt deeply intimidated but also honored to finally meet her husband's parents, although with her personality, she got along terribly with Bardock and much better with Guinea, even teaching Guinea how to cook Earth dishes. During those visits, the other human fighters met Goku's parents as well as Bardock's squad, who, having died on the same day Planet Vegeta was destroyed, had also been revived. The humans were relieved to see that although these Saiyans were rather serious and unfriendly, at least they were not savage monsters like they'd imagined. Even King Vegeta visited Earth, with his son introducing him to his, technically, wife, Bulma, though they had never formally married, and also presenting him to their newborn son, Trunks. Since King Vegeta had not yet completely changed his personality, he found it rather pathetic and disgusting that his son had stooped to procreating with another species, especially with such a stubborn and insufferable woman as Bulma, in his opinion. As expected, he got along very poorly with her. Still, this was quite normal given the society he came from, in which he was born and raised. It was not as though Vegeta himself was much of a sweetheart to Bulma either, but over time, things would improve. As time passed, training with dozens and dozens of warriors at once proved extremely beneficial to everyone's power growth. In Dragon Ball, even basic training can be more effective than any advanced training if done with training partners, and even more so with Saiyans. Because of this, over time, some Saiyans managed to achieve Super Saiyan. Bardock, of course, but also King Vegeta, Bardock's squad, and a few other Saiyans. Nevertheless, they were still vastly weaker than Goku and Vegeta, who were growing extremely powerful by training so intensely with one another, something that had not happened at that point in the original story, significantly boosting their power. King Vegeta grew disgusted upon realizing that maybe his son and his rival Kakarot were right, and that social classes among Saiyans did not matter. Those who gained Super Saiyan had almost nothing in common in terms of elite or low-class status. Both lower and upper-class Saiyans could attain the form. Seeing that it was neither so special nor truly legendary, nor even exclusive to his royal bloodline, King Vegeta fell into a deep existential crisis regarding his role as King of the Saiyans, wondering what made him legitimate as king if neither he nor his dynasty had anything special in their genes. Furthermore, not even counting Goku and Vegeta, warriors like Bardock were slightly above him as well, frustrating him immensely as he lost confidence in himself, almost regretting and resenting his son for bringing everyone back to life, only to humiliate him this way. Eventually, Goku and Vegeta also informed their families about the threat of the androids in the future and how Goku would die from a heart virus, worrying Bardock and Guinea greatly. They kept a close watch to ensure that Kakarot took his heart medicine as soon as he felt the first symptoms of the disease. Over time, some Saiyans became strong enough to serve as decent training partners for Goku and Vegeta, which also forced Piccolo to push himself harder, and Gohan managed to achieve Super Saiyan much earlier than in the original story. With so many Super Saiyans training together, it was inevitable that someone would eventually come up with the idea of maintaining Super Saiyan constantly in order to better control the form, quickly discovering the so-called full power, or grade 4 state. This gave a huge advantage to several warriors, pushing their powers even further. Because of that, Goku and Vegeta were immeasurably stronger than they were in the original story at that point. Even though everything was going well and it was great for Goku to have a relationship with his parents, a taboo subject still remained among them. One that always made family gatherings awkward. The subject of Raditz. Obviously, by this time, Goku had explained to them everything that happened with Raditz and how he died due to his own actions, but despite understanding why Goku had to do what he did back then, Bardock and Gine now wanted him to give Raditz the same second chance he had given them in their entire race. Eventually, Goku agreed, deciding to revive Raditz as soon as Earth's Dragon Balls became active again, resulting in a very tense and uncomfortable situation for everyone, especially for Gohan, who still carried the trauma of having been kidnapped as a child by his uncle. Although Raditz's first thought upon being revived was to kill absolutely everyone, especially his brother and Piccolo, the presence of Bardock and Gine managed to calm the impulsive Saiyan. Even so, it would take him a long time to forgive Kakarot for killing him, though that was basically his own fault. Again, he would take a long time to admit it. Time continued to pass, finishing up the final year before the androids' arrival. Goku and Vegeta asked some Saiyans if they wanted to come to Earth to help fight the androids. Naturally, Bardock and his squad jumped at the chance, eager to test their powers as Super Saiyans. King Vegeta also decided to go fight with them, hoping for a chance to unleash his fury on those so-called androids, while Gine traveled along as moral support for Chi-Chi and the others who were not fighters, since she was not a warrior and had never resumed training. Combat was simply not something she enjoyed. Raditz, however, preferred to avoid the situation by staying on Planet Vegeta alone. And besides, he was too far behind in terms of power to be of any help in the upcoming battle anyway. Because Goku's parents were more involved in his life, he actually took his heart medicine, so there were no more problems on that front. When the fateful date and location arrived where the androids would appear, everyone went there to fight, waiting patiently for these enemies to show up. While they waited, Yajirobe bought senzu beans for everyone, and as he was about to leave the area, he was the first victim of one of the androids' attacks. The enemy launched an energy blast that destroyed his flying vehicle, but fortunately he survived by falling into the ocean. Gohan was sent to rescue Yajirobe, while the rest of the group spread out through the city to locate the androids, since they had no detectable key. Unlike the original story, where the group was smaller, this time it was much larger, so by the time Yamcha had the bad luck of running into androids 20 and 19, he was saved at the last second by Fasha before Dr. Gero could absorb his energy and impale him through the chest. Yamcha and Fasha immediately flared their keys so the others could find them, and everyone quickly arrived on the scene to confront the androids. Android 20 then began to ruthlessly destroy several occupied buildings with I-beams, only to be stopped by Goku's furious blow. Goku then negotiated with Gero to go fight somewhere without civilians, and Gero, unfazed, accepted. Thus, everyone followed the androids to a deserted area for the battle. Although the androids' cold robotic demeanor was unsettling, the fighters were not too worried. The only question was who would fight first. Naturally, Goku wanted to fight. He was in perfect condition, having taken his medicine on time, but Vegeta stepped in, wanting to show everyone his superiority as well. It was at that moment, however, that King Vegeta asserted his authority over his son, insisting that he be the one to fight Android 19, and the others ultimately accepted. By this point in the story, King Vegeta, along with Bardock, had a power level comparable to Goku and Vegeta from the original timeline at the start of that saga, whereas the Goku and Vegeta of this alternate timeline already had full power Super Saiyan, grade 4, and were about as strong as Goku was during the Cell games in the original series. Ironically, letting King Vegeta fight the android was better for having an interesting battle, since otherwise Goku and Vegeta would have wiped out either of the two androids. It also gave everyone the chance to see just how much father and son resembled each other. King Vegeta fought with the same brutality and satisfaction in causing damage that his son did, ultimately finishing off Android 19 in much the same way Vegeta did in the original storyline. Astounded by King Vegeta's display of enormous power and realizing only then that he was clearly outmatched, Dr. Gero tried to flee, but a vigilant Bardock blocked his attempt and prevented his escape, setting him up for the vicious beating he was about to receive. Bardock fought the other android, tearing him to pieces the same way King Vegeta had done with 19, finishing Dr. Gero off before he could get back to his lab to awaken the other androids. It was right at the moment Bardock finished off Dr. Gero that future Trunks arrived at the battlefield, completely confused by the sheer absurdity of the situation. From his perspective, nothing made sense. He was seeing 2 Gokus and 2 Vegetas, and 2 androids in pieces that looked nothing like those from this future. Terrified, he realized that the timeline had changed far more than he ever expected. Goku and the others tried to calm Trunks down, who was nervous about so many new faces, and Goku explained everything that had happened over the past 3 years since they last met, how he decided to revive the entire Saiyan race. The future hybrid was stunned by this choice, unable to believe that real Saiyans from Planet Vegeta were standing before him, and that his grandfather, King Vegeta, was there as well. After recovering from the initial shock, Trunks informed everyone that the androids they had just defeated were not the same ones from his future, going on to describe their appearances. This revelation stunned the entire group because of how drastically events had changed, and they wondered if Trunks' time travel had triggered changes that would make this new timeline unrecognizable to him. After all, in his future, Goku never revived the Saiyans. Shortly afterward, Bulma arrived in a flying vehicle with Yajirobe and Gohan, and they updated her as well. Left with few ways to figure out what was happening, Bulma suggested they head to Dr. Gero's secret lab, telling them where it was located. They all traveled to that hidden base and, after forcing open the entrance, which was surprisingly sturdy, they discovered Gero's extensive work, especially androids 17 and 18. These were androids Trunks recognized, although many more surprises awaited, such as the existence of android 16 and an even more secret underground laboratory. Bulma and the others also discovered an incubator containing a developing experimental creature. Further research into Gero's notes revealed that this horrifying lifeform was meant to absorb androids 17 and 18, who had been ordinary teenagers captured and modified against their will, so the bio-android could achieve its perfect form and kill Goku. The innocent Saiyan found himself curious to see how strong such a being would be once fully developed. Although Trunks' first reaction, along with that of the more impulsive Saiyans from Planet Vegeta, was to destroy Gero's lab and eliminate the entire problem right away. Many were against that idea. Bulma preferred to take the androids in Cell with her to reprogram them, ensuring they would no longer pose a threat or have Goku's death as their objective. Trunks now wondered if in his future a Cell would eventually appear once fully developed, worrying about the safety of his future world and his mother, who was there alone. After some annoying logistical steps, they managed to transport all of Dr. Gero's research data, plus the androids and the developing Cell incubator, to Capsule Corporation. Bulma felt confident in her ability to reprogram the androids fairly quickly, though Cell would take more time, even if she accelerated his development. With that, it appeared all the present threats were handled, for now, but that was far from the truth. Piccolo received a summons from Kami, who asked him to come immediately to the lookout in the sky. Upon arriving, Kami gave Piccolo terrible news. Contrary to what everyone believed, the threats had not ended. He told his other half about a strange creature he'd been observing over the past few hours, one that literally crawled out of the ground and turned into a sort of giant insect. With the information on the bio-android that Bulma had retrieved from Dr. Gero's lab, the two Namekians had a better idea of what this creature might be. Yet they remained deeply puzzled, since it was strange for a creation of Dr. Gero to be so far from everything, even from the place where his lab was. Kami then sent Piccolo to find and confront this creature to see what it really was, and make sure it wasn't part of some new scheme by Dr. Gero. Meanwhile, the others had begun to celebrate their supposed victory over adversity, though some were more skeptical, particularly the Saiyans from Planet Vegeta, who were less relaxed and more on guard than the Earth-raised Saiyans. Bardock and King Vegeta also thought it was suspicious that Trunks' future had changed so much. Trunks, for his part, had another problem. He was still too weak to defeat the androids in his future. Although Bulma assured him that she could build a remote to deactivate them, Trunks wanted the strength to back up that plan if it failed. That was when Goku had an idea. Trunks should go train in the hyperbolic time chamber, ideally with a partner, so that the training would be more effective and the long stretch in that dimension less mentally taxing. The question became who would spend an entire year training with him. Surprisingly, King Vegeta volunteered to go into the chamber with his grandson. This caught everyone off guard, especially Trunks, but intrigued by a chance to learn more about the family and history he never knew, he agreed, happily assuming that his grandfather just wanted to get to know him better. That was not really the reason, though. Meanwhile, Piccolo finally intercepted the creature Kami had spotted in Yunzabet Heights, or Ginger Town, depending on the adaptation, confronting the giant insect-like man and learning his identity, Cell, exactly as in the original story. There, Piccolo gathered as much information as Cell was willing to disclose, realizing that this Cell was the same Cell that Bulma and the others had just retrieved from Dr. Gero's secret lab, only he came from the future. Piccolo understood the urgency of stopping him before he became powerful enough to confidently assault Capsule Corporation, find the deactivated androids there, and absorb them in order to achieve his perfect form. Once Piccolo got all the information he needed, he stopped faking a disadvantage and showed Cell his true power. Although one might think Piccolo would be in trouble without fusing with Kami, in this reality he had been forced to train practically non-stop for 2 years with multiple Saiyans, and eventually multiple Super Saiyans. As a result, he had to keep surpassing himself to handle all that power and so many rivals at once, thus matching roughly the same strength he had in the original story after fusing with Kami. Consequently, their initial confrontation played out similarly to how it did originally. However, things turned out even better for Piccolo this time, with everyone else either resting or asleep on the other side of the planet, convinced the threats were over. No one interrupted them, leaving Cell no chance to escape by distraction. Eventually, when Cell realized he was running out of options and felt cornered by Piccolo, who would not let him get away, Piccolo fully unleashed his maximum power, shedding his weighted clothing and instantly disintegrated Cell, wiping out every last cell until nothing remained. Thus, he prevented a major tragedy for Earth before Cell could grow powerful enough to do anything. Nonetheless, it was an intriguing experience for Piccolo, who saw the potential that creature had, and he was very curious about how strong present Cell would become once Bulma finished reprogramming him. The following day, Piccolo gathered all the warriors at Capsule Corporation to tell them what happened. Everyone was shocked that a Cell from the future had traveled to the past to absorb the androids, validating Trunks' worst fears that Cell would eventually appear in his timeline as well, making it all the more important that he get as strong as possible as quickly as possible. Not long after that discussion, Trunks and King Vegeta left for Kami's lookout to train in the hyperbolic time chamber. While grandfather and grandson were training, the others investigated the location where future Cell had shown up. They found the same time machine Bulma built in the future, only it was dirty and heavily damaged. Bulma put it into a capsule for safekeeping. There was no way they were going to leave such technology sitting around for anyone to find someday. Shortly afterward, back at Capsule Corporation, Bulma finished reprogramming androids 17, 18, and 16. By reprogramming, she merely removed all of Dr. Gero's programming devices and objectives, granting them complete free will. But in case their natural behavior, even with free will, led them to attack and kill people, Bulma made sure she activated them while all the warriors were present. Thus, the androids were awakened. Though the atmosphere felt tense, it soon eased up when it became clear that the androids were mostly just confused, dazed, and disoriented by where they were. With some discomfort, Bulma and the others introduced themselves gradually, explaining everything that had happened. Androids 17 and 18 slowly regained memories of their past, realizing they'd been kidnapped and used as test subjects in Dr. Gero's experiments. Without a doubt, they had a lot to process, especially the trauma of being turned into androids. But for now, they were grateful to Goku and the others for freeing them from Dr. Gero's control. They wanted to leave that place and start new lives together, with 16 also wishing to accompany his fellow androids in the new life they planned to adopt. Before they departed, everyone rather awkwardly asked if their new life involved destroying cities and killing humans, but the three assured them that they had no interest in harming anyone. They just planned to live peacefully as they wished. The androids then took their leave, thanking Bulma once again for freeing them. Bardock and his squad still had doubts about whether the androids were being honest, but Goku pointed out that if they tried anything, it would be easy to find them and defeat them with the power level everyone had reached by then, so there was not much point worrying. A day later, Trunks and King Vegeta emerged from the hyperbolic time chamber stronger than ever. Trunks had learned a great deal from his grandfather, especially regarding all the training the Saiyans had done over the past 2 years. He now had access to full power Super Saiyan, with strength comparable to Goku and Vegeta's at that point. As for King Vegeta, though clearly more powerful, he still could not match the potential of a younger warrior, or a hybrid Saiyan, and found that frustrating. Even so, he hid it by pretending to be proud that someone of his own blood had surpassed him, which was already a big step forward in his attitude. After all, previously he would never have acknowledged Trunks as part of his lineage, viewing him as a bastard offspring of a woman who wasn't even Saiyan. Now confident in his power and caught up on everything that had happened while he was training, Trunks returned to the future to reunite with future Bulma, finally defeating the androids, and eventually take on Cell when he appeared. With that, Earth was at peace again. The Saiyans returned to Planet Vegeta, continuing its development and restructuring as a neutral planet in the universe, working to resolve many past conflicts in as diplomatic a manner as possible, especially with representatives of the Galactic Patrol. Bulma helped maintain relations between these organizations via her connection with Jaco. Over time, bit by bit, the rumor that the Saiyan race and their entire planet had been brought back to life started spreading across the universe, eventually reaching the ears of the Heaters and, more importantly, Granola, for whom this was a highly personal matter. On hearing the shocking news, Granola was overcome with rage and thirst for vengeance on a level he had not felt in years. He returned to his planet and spoke with Monaito, who tried to remain neutral as he had far more context regarding what had really happened on that horrible day when the Saiyans invaded the planet and killed his race. However, Granola, blinded by anger, ignored Monaito's calming words and set out that very night to find the last Dragon Ball he needed to summon Monaito's dragon. After several days of searching, he finally found it, summoned the dragon, and wished to become the most powerful warrior in the universe. The dragon granted the wish at the cost of a portion of Granola's lifespan. But because at that point in the story, no one except possibly Gods of Destruction had truly universe-level divine power, Granola merely ended with a power surpassing that of Goku and Vegeta, currently the strongest warriors. He sacrificed some of his lifespan, but not too drastically, giving him ample time to adapt to his new power and execute his plan of revenge. Meanwhile, life continued normally both on Earth and Planet Vegeta. About a year after Granola made his wish, and 2 years since the android and cell events, the Saiyans on Planet Vegeta detected a celestial body approaching. Wondering who or what it could be, they watched it eventually land in the middle of one of the Saiyan cities. To the astonishment of the veteran Saiyans, it turned out to be a Cerealian who unleashed a massive power, especially for someone of that race. After cursing every Saiyan in sight, he began a massacre resembling a slaughter more than a battle. Granola killed dozens of Saiyans before King Vegeta himself and Bardock, the strongest Saiyans on the planet, stepped in to stop his bloodbath. Bardock was stunned at the sight of this Cerealian. He was almost certain he recognized him, but found it hard to confirm if the man before him was the same Cerealian child he had saved so many years ago. Bardock attempted to reason with Granola and be diplomatic, but King Vegeta, ignoring what he viewed as weak talk, attacked the intruder at full force, enraged at the slaughter of his subjects. Much to everyone's shock, King Vegeta was being beaten mercilessly by the Cerealian, unable to do anything in response, even though he had become far stronger than his people since training in the time chamber with his future grandson. Bardock hurried to gather all the surviving Saiyans as quickly as possible and, together with his squad, coordinated a defensive counterattack to rescue King Vegeta from Granola's onslaught and protect the Saiyan planet. Meanwhile, Bardock ordered Gine and Raditz to fetch the communicator Bulma had given them to contact Earth's warriors, so Kakarot and the rest could come to help. Raditz, disgusted that he had to escort his mother to his brother's home to call his gang, was still brimming with resentment toward Goku for killing him, too stubborn to admit it was his own fault. Even though so many powerful Super Saiyans threw themselves at Granola all at once, it made no difference. His power was simply too far above theirs. Many Saiyans died or were injured too badly to continue. Bardock, completely beaten and unable to keep fighting at that pace, pleaded with Granola to stop, once again trying to reason with him. Granola, however, was still blinded by his thirst for blood. He took his time crushing Bardock over and over while Bardock, despite the beating and pain, refused to give up on reasoning with him, offering more details about his home planet and how everything happened on the day the Saiyans invaded. Bardock apologized for it all and also mentioned names Bardock couldn't possibly know unless he had truly been there, like Monaito or Granola's mother, Muesli. Hearing those names, Granola paused briefly and furiously demanded to know why Bardock spoke them. Weak and trembling, Bardock explained that not all Saiyans were as indifferent to the destruction they caused under Frieza's orders as Granola believed. Bardock was the one who saved Granola as a child from being killed by other Saiyans, or even the Heaters themselves. This revelation threw Granola into utter confusion, and he slowly began to calm down from the bloodthirsty frenzy he was in, until he was abruptly kicked by another warrior who had just arrived to help. Bardock shouted at him not to do that, but it was too late. Granola grew enraged again, convinced that Bardock's words had only been a distraction, now more determined than ever to exterminate every last Saiyan. The one who attacked Granola was Goku. Along with Vegeta, Gohan, and Piccolo, he had just arrived on the planet to rescue the surviving Saiyans. Seeing the carnage, the countless deaths all around him, and witnessing his father Bardock at the brink of death, Goku was enraged beyond measure. He resolved to take down this new enemy who was destroying all their efforts to redeem the Saiyans by bringing them back to life. Goku then revealed to the remaining conscious Saiyans the new power that would become the pride of their race from that moment on, the power of Super Saiyan 2. The landscape was riddled with craters and collapsed buildings, with dozens of Saiyans dead or gravely injured, while Bardock, barely able to remain standing, coordinated the survivors to move away from the battle that was about to begin. Granola's energy, far more powerful than any other on Planet Vegeta, was an imposing and terrifying presence. Wasting no time, Goku advanced toward Granola, unleashing his power as a Super Saiyan 2, while Vegeta and the others protected the wounded. The fight would begin immediately, with Granola launching swift and precise attacks aimed at Goku's vital points, which he barely managed to dodge thanks to his experience and technical superiority. However, Granola's ability to analyze and anticipate every movement of his opponent gave him the advantage, forcing Goku to fight more defensively as he tried to understand the reasons behind Granola's fury and attacks. The battle would be intense, with each blow echoing like thunder and every energy blast lighting up the skies. Even as skilled and powerful as he was, Goku would begin to show signs of fatigue. Granola, driven by his desire for revenge, proved to be a relentless opponent, and despite Goku's efforts, he could not convince him to stop. Realizing he could not defeat him alone, Vegeta would join the fight, also transforming into Super Saiyan 2 and demonstrating that he too had reached that level of power after years of training with Kakarot. The coordination between Goku and Vegeta would begin to turn the tide of the battle. The two warriors combined their attacks with impressive precision, gradually overpowering Granola. However, even when cornered, Granola would refuse to surrender, preferring to die rather than end his crusade of vengeance against the Saiyans. At that critical moment, Bardock, severely injured, would slowly move toward where they were fighting, barely able to remain standing. Yet his determination was evident. As he approached, he would tell Goku and Vegeta to step back. Bardock would stand in front of Granola without raising his fist and begin to speak to him. He would explain that he remembered everything that happened on Planet Cereal so many years ago, when the Saiyan invasion destroyed Granola's home. He would reveal that it was he who saved Granola, clearly recalling his mother Muesli and Monaito, who begged them to protect the Cerealian child. Granola, still full of rage, would attempt to attack, but Bardock's words would briefly stop him, and Bardock would continue explaining that not all Saiyans were monsters and that many of them had been Frieza's slaves, forced to obey orders under the threat of extermination. With each word, Granola would begin to doubt, finally remembering the events of his childhood and the face of the Saiyan who saved him. Bardock would admit that the Saiyans committed unforgivable atrocities, but would also point out that his son Goku had worked tirelessly to redeem the legacy of their race, and that thanks to him and his desire to bring them all back, they'd been given a second chance to redeem themselves and become better people, thus thriving as a better version of the Saiyan race. Granola, finally aware of how much blood he had spilled in his thirst for revenge, would begin to calm down, regretting all the atrocities he had committed to get to that point. Seeing an opportunity to heal the wounds of the past, Bardock would suggest a way to make amends for the horrors the Saiyans had inflicted upon Planet Cereal. Looking at Goku, he would give him the signal for what they had to do. Goku, understanding immediately, would use his instant transmission to take Granola, Bardock, and the others to Earth. Gathering the Dragon Balls, Goku would summon Shenron with everyone present and wish for the revival of the entire Cerealian race that died during the Saiyan invasion. The sky would light up as the dragon granted the wish, bringing the Cerealians back to life. Of course, to see a change, they would need to be on Planet Cereal. But Goku and the others would assure Granola it was done, that his race had been resurrected. Granola, deeply moved, would fall to his knees, unable to hold back his tears. He would apologize for his actions, recognizing that his vengeance had turned him into exactly what he hated most. Goku, smiling, would assure him that he now had the chance to start over. Finally, the Saiyan would take Granola back to Planet Cereal via instant transmission. There, Granola would reunite with his people, including his mother Muesli, while Goku watched from a distance. With a farewell gesture, Goku would return to Earth, satisfied that he had helped heal an old wound for both the Saiyans and the Cerealians, thus ending the cycle of vengeance and leaving hope for redemption and reconciliation between both peoples. Following the events of reconciliation between the Saiyans and the Cerealians, life would go on as usual, both on Earth and on Planet Vegeta. Another year would pass, and with the required time fulfilled, the Dragon Balls would once again be used to undo the damage caused by Granola's revenge. The fallen Saiyans from that massacre would be resurrected, and Planet Vegeta would once again feel a renewed spark of hope seeing how the effects of their redemption continued to bear fruit. The Saiyan society, though still marked by its ancient warlike principles, was changing. Goku, Vegeta, Bardock, and other notable warriors led the efforts not only to train the Saiyans in strength and combat techniques, but also to promote a more peaceful and constructive attitude toward coexistence in interpersonal relationships. The strict laws that once governed Saiyan society would be reviewed, encouraging childbirth and the formation of families. This would not only help rebuild their population, but also give them a reason to look to the future rather than cling to the scars of the past. Gradually, a new generation of Saiyans would be born on Planet Vegeta, with many embracing the renewed ideals of their society. At the same time, some Saiyans would decide to move to Earth after getting approval from Vegeta and the other warriors. There, these Saiyans would assimilate to Earthling life, working in various fields, forming new families, and in some cases, bringing into the world hybrid Saiyans, who would show extraordinary potential from a young age, just like Gohan, Trunks, and Goten, who obviously would already have been born by that point as well. The Saiyan society seemed to be thriving in an unexpected way, and both Goku and Vegeta felt satisfied with the changes. Vegeta in particular was deeply proud that his race had been given a second chance to prosper thanks to his own efforts and those of Kakarot. Bardock and Guinea, watching their hybrid grandchildren grow up on Earth, felt a peace they never imagined experiencing, never believing they might one day see their grandchildren thrive, as it was uncommon for a Saiyan to live so long previously due to constantly dying in battle. However, while everything seemed to be going well, one issue remained unresolved: Goku's relationship with his brother Raditz. Although he had been resurrected, Raditz still harbored deep resentment toward his younger brother, resentment that had not faded with time. Raditz still could not forgive Kakarot for having killed him years before, much less for having taken so long to decide to bring him back. Despite Bardock and Guinea's efforts to mediate between their sons, Raditz kept an emotional distance from his brother. For Goku, his tension was a thorn in his side, a constant reminder that he had not managed to repair the bond with his only biological daughter. One night, in the vast desert of Planet Vegeta, under a sky full of stars, Goku decided to confront Raditz. With no one else around to interfere, Goku arrived at the place where Raditz usually trained alone. Raditz looked at him with disdain while Goku, wearing his usual calm smile, approached him. Goku quickly made his intention clear to finally resolve the tensions between them, but Raditz, however, responded coldly, letting himself be consumed by his wounded pride. To him, Kakarot was not only his younger brother, but also the one who had humiliated and killed him. Their conversation would not be enough to dispel the years of accumulated resentment, and Raditz, full of frustration, challenged Goku to a fight, convinced that only through battle could he express everything he felt. Knowing this was necessary, Goku accepted the challenge, and under the moonlight, both Saiyans prepared to face each other, not as enemies, but as brothers attempting to mend an emotional fracture that had gone years without healing. Or rather, from Raditz's perspective, Goku was largely at peace with himself. Under the starry desert sky, Goku and Raditz squared off. Raditz, with his pride and anger accumulated over the years, charged at his brother with all the strength he had gained since his resurrection. The difference in power was immense, but that did not stop Raditz, who released all his frustration in a relentless flurry of attacks, transforming into a Super Saiyan in his rage. Despite reaching that form, his power was erratic and unstable. Raditz lacked the necessary control to use his transformation effectively, the result of his isolation and refusal to train with the others. Goku, who had long since surpassed that level, remained on the defensive, blocking and dodging attacks without counterattacking. His stance was patient, almost serene, allowing Raditz to vent his fury. Raditz attacked with everything he had, unleashing powerful energy blasts that barely grazed Goku. As he fought, his rage drove him into an uncontrollable monologue filled with accusations and confessions. He talked about his time in hell, where he relived his mistakes over and over, feeling betrayed by his own brother, who killed him without hesitation, something that was, of course, not exactly true, but Raditz had convinced himself otherwise. He described how, upon being resurrected, he expected everything to be different, but instead he found a family that had moved on without him. Goku, without responding, listened attentively while blocking his attacks. Raditz's moves were desperate, reflecting a warrior more trapped in his mind than in the present. As he poured out his rage, his frustration reached a climax, and Goku prodded him with small movements, just enough for Raditz to keep talking. Raditz went on, saying how he had always been belittled for being one of the weakest Saiyans, even among the low-class warriors. He admitted he never understood why Bardock and Gine sent Goku to Earth, believing they had chosen him over Raditz. But in the midst of his anger and adrenaline, he became lost in his own words until finally, almost without realizing it, he spoke them out loud. "It was my fault. It was my fault. I was the one who caused my death. I was the one who chose to act that way. Neither you nor anyone else is to blame." Upon uttering those words, Raditz stopped dead in his tracks. His Super Saiyan transformation vanished as he dropped to his knees, physically and emotionally exhausted. The realization hit him like an avalanche. For the first time, he acknowledged that his own decisions had led him to his fate, and that his hatred toward Goku was merely a mask to hide his own guilt. Raditz lowered his head, unable to hold back his tears. He spoke in a defeated tone, admitting that he had always acted wrongly, and his entire life had been a string of mistakes, and that even now, after being resurrected, he remained a failure, doomed to carry the shame of his existence. At that moment, Goku approached him, extending his hand. Raditz looked up, surprised by the gesture. Goku, with a serene smile, told him that he was not doomed to remain as he was. He explained that many Saiyans had started out equal or worse than him, weak, stubborn, and full of bitterness. But through effort and determination, they had changed, surpassing their limits and becoming formidable warriors. Raditz listened as Goku spoke about how group training and mental support had allowed the resurrected Saiyans to reach levels of power Frieza could never have imagined. Goku assured him that if he abandoned his bitterness, stopped isolating himself, and trained alongside him and the others, he too could reach that level and go beyond. With tears in his eyes, Raditz took his brother's hand, letting him help him up. For the first time in years, Raditz set aside the weight of his pride and hatred, deciding to take Kakarot's advice. He promised to try to rebuild his relationship with his family and train with the other Saiyans, not only to become stronger, but to overcome the past and find a new purpose. The night ended with both brothers lying on the desert floor, gazing at the stars. Without words, both understood that this encounter not only marked the end of a one-sided enmity, but also the beginning of a new stage, one in which Raditz could finally walk beside his brother, not as an enemy, but as family and a rival. Following the reconciliation between Raditz and Goku, the older brother would finally begin to fully integrate with the others. Although it was initially difficult for him to set aside his pride and distant nature, little by little he would open up more to his family and the other Saiyans. Time would pass with Bardock and Gine, who would give him the support he needed to move forward, and he would strengthen his bond with Goku through intense joint training. Over time, Raditz would also begin training with Vegeta and the other warriors, learning to refine his Super Saiyan transformation and working to surpass his limits. Thanks to group training, Raditz would eventually achieve full control over his form, also obtaining the 4th stage of Super Saiyan and integrating into the group as just another warrior. Years would continue to pass, and life on both Earth and Planet Vegeta would go on prospering for Saiyans and their allies. Many Saiyans, intrigued by Earth's culture, would explore its wonders, fascinated by its people, culture, and especially by its cuisine. Earth's food would become an important factor for many, even motivating them to stay there permanently. As time went by, more Saiyans integrated into Earth's society, forming mixed families and contributing to a new generation of hybrids. Meanwhile, on Planet Vegeta, the reforms initiated by Vegeta, Bardock, and other Saiyan leaders continued to pay off. The population was growing quickly thanks to the new values being promoted, such as the importance of creating families and raising the next generation. These new generations of Saiyans, born in the era of the race's rebirth, were powerful warriors with a more balanced focus on both combat and peaceful coexistence. Eventually, events would lead to what would be comparable to the beginnings of the Majin Buu saga. Gohan, now a young adult, would begin studying in Orange City to meet his mother's expectations and focus on his education. However, his Saiyan nature could not ignore the injustices he witnessed, which would lead him to adopt the secret identity of the Great Saiyaman, acting as a superhero to protect the city. During one of his adventures, Gohan would meet Videl, the daughter of the legendary Mr. Satan. Videl, clever and determined, would quickly figure out Gohan's secret identity as the Great Saiyaman and use that information to blackmail him, saying that if he did not agree to participate in the upcoming World Martial Arts Tournament and teach her how to use Ki, she would reveal his identity to everyone. With no other choice, Gohan would agree to Videl's conditions, and from then on, he would begin training her while also seriously resuming his own training for the tournament. The idea of participating in such a nostalgic event would greatly excite Goku, who would fondly remember the tournaments he competed in as a child. Goku, excited about the event, would ask the other Saiyans if they wanted to take part. Bardock and Raditz would agree without hesitation, motivated by the idea of testing their strength in a tournament that brought together some of the best fighters in the world. Vegeta, though initially disinterested, would eventually agree as well, seeing it as an opportunity to measure his power against the others. With only a month left before the tournament, everyone would train intensively. The training sessions among Goku, Vegeta, Bardock, and Raditz would become fiercer than ever, while Gohan balanced his time between studying, training Videl, and preparing for the tournament. Excitement for the event grew, and Saiyans on both Earth and Planet Vegeta prepared to showcase their power and represent the spirit of their reborn race on a stage that brought together the best of both worlds. The World Martial Arts Tournament began with a nostalgic and exciting atmosphere. Fighters from Earth, Saiyans, and friends gathered once again to participate in an event that evoked memories of simpler times. Veteran participants such as Krillin, Yamcha, Tien Shinhan, and Chaozu joined new contenders like Gohan, Videl, and the Saiyans from Planet Vegeta. Among them, Bardock and Raditz, who were eager to test their strength in this kind of Earthling competition. The excitement was at its peak, but everything took an intriguing turn with the arrival of strange figures. Among the participants were the mysterious Supreme Kai and his assistant Kibito, whose presence radiated an unusual calm and authority. Although, who knows, they could have been mere pretenders. There were also Yamu and Spalpovich, two fighters who seemed out of place with their bizarre attitudes and disturbing energies. Though the tournament appeared to be a normal event, the atmosphere would soon become more tense. In the junior division, the tournament would be far more competitive than Goten and Trunks expected. In addition to facing each other, they would have to fight against other hybrid Saiyan children, offsprings of Saiyans who had decided to move to Earth and start families. These children, like them, possessed impressive natural talent and power. Despite intense clashes against other Saiyan children whose parents had moved and formed families on Earth, Goten and Trunks proved to be the most skilled and powerful, advancing to the final round. Their final match against each other would be similar to the original story, but with both pushing their power to the limit. Both would reach Super Saiyan 2, putting on a spectacular fight that impressed the entire audience. The battle would end in a perfect tie when they both went out of the ring at the same time, declaring them co-winners of the junior tournament. In the adult division, the initial bouts would unfold similarly to the original story. Goku, Vegeta, Bardock, and Raditz stood out as formidable contenders, while the other fighters like Krillin and Yamcha gave it their all to remain in the competition. The crowd was thrilled by the incredible level of skill the Warriors demonstrated in every match. However, attention would focus on the fight between Videl and Spalpovich. Thanks to her training with Gohan and Goku, Videl would be far better prepared than in the original story, using advanced techniques and a better understanding of Ki. Videl would manage to take on Spalpovich with a ferocity and skill that surprised everyone. Although her opponent was brutal and had unnatural strength thanks to Babidi's influence, Videl held out much longer, landing blows that forced Spalpovich to retreat several times. Yet the power gap was too great. Despite her courage and abilities, Videl would end up losing. And though she would be injured, her condition would not be as severe as in the original story, thanks to her prior training and her ability to dodge the most devastating attacks. Gohan and the others would help her out of the ring and give her Senzu beans so she could recover quickly. When it was Gohan's turn, his opponent would be Kibito, the Supreme Kai's assistant. Before the match started, Kibito would ask Gohan to transform into a Super Saiyan. Although Gohan would be confused by this request, the Supreme Kai would project a sense of calm that convinced him to comply. So Gohan agreed and released his power, first transforming into a Super Saiyan and then into Super Saiyan 2, unleashing an energy that dazzled everyone present. That was the moment Yamu and Spalpovich were waiting for. Without warning, both rushed to Gohan to restrain him using a strange device to absorb his energy. Although Gohan tried to resist, the Supreme Kai stopped him, explaining telepathically that they needed to let him take the energy in order to follow them to their master Babidi. With Gohan's energy absorbed, Yamu and Spalpovich fled the arena, leaving Gohan exhausted but still conscious thanks to Kibito, who used his healing ability to restore him. The Supreme Kai then revealed the truth to the Warriors, explaining Babidi's threat and his goal of reviving Majin Buu. Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Piccolo, Bardock, Raditz, and the others quickly prepared to pursue Babidi's minions, leaving the tournament on hold and thus embarking on a mission that would soon bring them face to face with a danger greater than they had anticipated. The warriors, guided by the Supreme Kai, followed Yamu and Spalpovich to a desolate wasteland where Babidi's hidden base was located. From behind the rocks, they watched the scene. Babidi, small and sinister, waited impatiently as his minions presented the device full of energy stolen from Gohan. The warriors recoiled in disgust when, after receiving the energy, Babidi cruelly destroyed Yamu and Spalpovich, disintegrating them mercilessly with a single movement of his hand once they were of no more use to him. Dabura, the king of demons, sensed the warriors' presence and informed Babidi. Without hesitation, Dabura headed to where they were hiding. Dabura, cold and calculating, launched a powerful ki blast at Kibito, who was too focused on watching the situation to react in time. However, Bardock, displaying impeccable reflexes, pushed Kibito aside at the last second, saving his life. With their cover blown, the warriors leaped into action. Dabura, confident in his strength, prepared for battle, but was not ready to face a combination of such formidable fighters. Goku and Vegeta in Super Saiyan 2 led the offensive while Bardock, Raditz, Gohan, and the others supported with synchronized attacks. The battle was quick and brutal, a complete massacre for Dabura, who stood no chance against the overwhelming power of so many opponents. Shocked by how easily they had destroyed his most powerful servant, Babidi panicked and fled hastily into his underground ship, taking the stolen energy from Gohan to fuel Majin Buu's awakening. Although he managed to fill Buu's energy reserves to 70%, it was still not enough to fully awaken the demon. As Babidi frantically tried to complete the ritual, the warriors followed him into the ship. On each level, they faced Babidi's minions. Pui Pui, confident in the advantage of his home planet after teleporting them there, was easily beaten by Vegeta, who defeated him with a single blow in his base form. Yakon, with his ability to absorb light, tried to take on Goku, but Goku overloaded the monster with his energy, causing him to explode. In desperation, Babidi attempted to control the mind of one of the warriors, hoping to exploit the darkness in their hearts to use them as an energy source. However, his plan failed, for not even the Saiyans from Planet Vegeta, known for their pride and tempers, had enough evil or emotional vulnerability to succumb to Babidi's control, at least not anymore. With no other options, Babidi was cornered in the ship's final level. In a last-ditch effort to defend himself, he tried to release Majin Buu with the 75% energy he had gathered, but the warriors stopped him before he could complete the ritual. Goku and Vegeta together finished off Babidi with a combined attack, destroying his ship and ensuring Majin Buu could never be awakened. With the threat neutralized, the Supreme Kai and Kibito expressed their gratitude to the warriors for their help. They took Majin Buu's sealed cocoon to a safe place away from Earth, making sure it could not be used to cause destruction in the future. Before departing, the Supreme Kai promised he would be available if the warriors ever needed his help, and he left, wishing them the best. With peace restored, the warriors returned to the World Martial Arts Tournament to finish it. The tension faded, and the event regained its festive atmosphere. The final matches were exciting, but the tournament served mostly as a reminder of how far everyone had come. After the tournament, they all gathered at Capsule Corporation for a huge feast. Saiyans, Earthlings, and allies enjoyed a night of laughter, food, and camaraderie. The Saiyans felt more united than ever, their families thriving both on Earth and on Planet Vegeta. The era of prosperity for the Saiyans, reborn and redeemed, continued, with everyone enjoying the peaceful, happy life they had built together, proud of the legacy they were leaving for future generations. Following the events of the Buu Saga, life returned to normal on both Earth and Planet Vegeta. With the threats eliminated, peaceful days allowed personal relationships to flourish and families to grow. Among them, the relationship between Gohan and Videl began to develop significantly. Videl, used to facing challenges, found in Gohan not only a caring partner, but also an inspiration. Surrounded by powerful warriors such as Goku, Vegeta, and the other Saiyans from Planet Vegeta, her determination to become stronger did not wane. On the contrary, she felt motivated to train hard, both to keep up with Gohan's abilities and to better understand his culture and Saiyan roots. With Gohan as her main mentor, and occasionally with the help of Goku, Piccolo, and others, Videl made huge strides in ki control and combat skills. Her discipline and perseverance led her to reach a sufficient level of power to travel to Planet Vegeta and meet the other Saiyans. When that time came, Gohan took her to Planet Vegeta, where Videl was introduced to her extensive Saiyan family. Although initially intimidated by the presence of such formidable warriors, the warm attitude of Guinea and the respect everyone showed for Videl's effort dispelled any insecurity she might have had. Guinea, in particular, accepted Videl immediately as an ideal partner for her grandson, admiring her strong spirit and determination, qualities that even Saiyans held in high regard. Gohan and Videl's relationship continued to strengthen over time, and after both graduated from their studies, they finally decided to take the next step in their life together by getting married. Their wedding was a grand event, bringing together all their friends and family from both Earth and Planet Vegeta. The wedding day was a blend of Earthling and Saiyan traditions, reflecting the union of two worlds and cultures. Goku, as enthusiastic as ever, could not stop talking about how proud he was of his son, while Chi-Chi shed tears of joy. Bardock and Guinea were there, with Guinea smiling broadly at seeing her family grow and flourish, something she had never imagined possible after the events that nearly led to their race's extinction. Bardock, though more reserved, also felt deeply happy and satisfied. Seeing his grandson build a strong family with a woman of admirable fighting spirit was a tremendous source of pride for him. The wedding was a celebration of love, unity, and hope for the future. After they got married, Videl's determination did not diminish. On the contrary, her Saiyan spirit, although not biological, grew over time, and she strove not only to impress her husband, but also to maintain the respect and place she had earned in the Saiyan family. She trained diligently to become even stronger, enjoying the challenges that Saiyan life presented. Eventually, the couple decided to start their own family, and when Videl became pregnant with Gohan, long before in the original story, the entire family celebrated the news. For Bardock and Guinea, it confirmed that their lineage would continue to thrive, and that the sacrifices of the past had not been in vain. The union of Gohan and Videl symbolized the perfect harmony between the strength and determination of the Saiyans and the compassion and love characteristic of Earth, giving rise to a bright future for them all. After Gohan and Videl were married, and with Pan arriving far earlier than in the original story, life went on in apparent peace, both on Earth and on Planet Vegeta. However, Destiny had prepared a new challenge that would once again test the Saiyans' power. To celebrate her birthday, Bulma had acquired a luxurious cruise ship, inviting friends, family, and close allies to a party that promised to be unforgettable. Aboard the cruise, the atmosphere was one of joy and relaxation. Pan, still a baby, was the center of everyone's attention, while Guinea made sure Goku didn't forget to behave properly, repeatedly reminding him that fulfilling his commitments was part of being a good father, husband, and friend. Meanwhile, on his planet, Beerus, the god of destruction, awoke from his long slumber after dreaming about the Super Saiyan God. Intrigued by the meaning of his vision, he caught up on the events that had taken place during his absence, thanks to Whis, his angel attendant. Upon learning that the Saiyans, a race he himself had allowed Frieza to exterminate, had been resurrected by a Saiyan named Goku, Beerus wanted to know more. Whis informed him that these reborn Saiyans had not only drastically changed their behavior, but were now a society seeking redemption and evolution. Following Whis' advice, Beerus decided to head to Earth, where the most prominent Saiyans were gathered. His arrival abruptly interrupted the party on the cruise ship. The appearance of the God of Destruction set off a wave of immediate tension among the guests, especially among the older Saiyans such as Vegeta and King Vegeta, who knew firsthand the absolute authority and power of Beerus. King Vegeta was particularly distressed, still vividly recalling the days when Beerus visited Planet Vegeta and the many humiliations he suffered at Beerus' hands. Bardock, though less familiar with Beerus, knew enough to understand that the mere presence of the God of Destruction was a serious matter. Even Raditz, who usually maintained a haughty attitude, could not help feeling intimidated. However, Beerus did not appear to come with destructive intentions. At least not initially, and intrigued by the changes the Saiyans had undergone, decided to give them a chance to prove themselves. He expressed his interest in the Super Saiyan God, yet none of those present knew anything about this legend, except for King Vegeta. With reluctance and feeling the weight of responsibility, the king shared the ancient legend he had heard in his youth. According to that story, the Super Saiyan God was a warrior born when 5 Saiyans of pure heart transferred their energy to a 6th. Although many believed it to be a myth, Beerus insisted on trying. Because there were so many Saiyans present, they managed to perform the ritual twice, resulting in not 1, but 2 Super Saiyan gods, Goku and Vegeta. The transformation surprised even the participants of the ritual, for the new form not only changed their appearance, but also radiated a divine energy that transcended any limit they had reached before. The ensuing battle between Beerus and the 2 Super Saiyan gods was of proportions never before seen. The entire world became a battlefield as the three warriors clashed with techniques and power that defied logic itself. Although Beerus dominated the fight, he was impressed by the potential and endurance of Goku and Vegeta. By the battle's end, Beerus, satisfied with what he had witnessed, decided not to destroy Earth. Instead, he offered Goku and Vegeta the chance to train under his, or rather Whis' tutelage to fully develop their divine abilities. Goku and Vegeta enthusiastically accepted the offer, but asked to bring Raditz, who was thrilled by the opportunity and agreed immediately. Bardock, though tempted, chose to remain on Planet Vegeta to continue overseeing the reconstruction of Saiyan society and to stay close to Guinea. As for King Vegeta, he felt he was not ready for training of such caliber and left that path to the new generations. Gohan, focused on his family and career, also declined the offer but promised to keep training on Earth. With the decision made, Goku, Vegeta, and Raditz left alongside Beerus and Whis for the God of Destruction's planet, taking Earth's food with them. They were ready to begin the most demanding training of their lives, training that would bring them closer to the level of the gods themselves. Meanwhile, life went on both on Earth and Planet Vegeta, with their families and allies preparing for whatever the future might bring. And so, while Goku, Vegeta, and Raditz went off to train with Beerus and Whis, the rest of the warriors on Earth and on the planet continued with their lives and training. However, upon returning to Planet Vegeta, Bardock, Guinea, and King Vegeta brought with them knowledge of the ritual for summoning the Super Saiyan God, holding the idea of performing the ritual on as many Saiyans of pure hearts as possible. Certainly, by this point, not all Saiyans were pure enough of heart for it to work on everyone, but even so, a significant number of Saiyans, especially the younger ones born after the race's resurrection, could use that incredible divine power. This led to hundreds or even thousands of Super Saiyan gods, who of course were nowhere near as strong as Goku, Vegeta, or Raditz, who were training on Beerus' planet. But it was still a collective display of power unmatched anywhere else in the universe. Because of this, with so many powerful warriors keeping watch for any threat on both Planet Vegeta and Earth, it would be impossible for Frieza to be revived. And even if that somehow happened, there's no way Golden Frieza, however powerful he might be, could survive a combined onslaught of thousands of Super Saiyan gods. But in any case, as mentioned, it is highly unlikely to imagine Frieza being resurrected in this story, for the Saiyans, keen to prove to the universe their genuine redemption and desire to change from how they once were, had spent the last several years collaborating continuously with the Galactic Patrol to eradicate criminals and organizations similar to Frieza's empire. Thus, with help from Granola, for example, they eventually captured or killed all members of the Heaters and practically wiped out what remained of Frieza's army, with Sorbet and Tagoma likely dead or at least imprisoned by the Galactic Patrol. Because of that, absolutely nothing serious or dangerous would happen for quite some time, and life went on for a Saiyan race that was growing ever more powerful and ever more divine. Until the day, after a long while, when Goku, Vegeta, and Raditz returned to Planet Vegeta to ask their parents for help in participating in a tournament organized by the Gods of Destruction on Universe 7 and Universe 6. Only Bardock and King Vegeta were needed, which was more than enough to form a team of 5 members. And thus, the wait for the tournament had barely begun. During the 3 days they had left, Goku, Vegeta, and Raditz had plenty of time to train in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, and Bardock and King Vegeta, wanting to perfect their powers and control over Super Saiyan God, agreed to go into the chamber with their sons, where time passed differently than outside. Therefore, after 3 years of training inside, they emerged far stronger, with colossal power on a scale monstrously superior to the original story. Just seeing how effective joint training was for Goku and Vegeta in the original story gives a hint of the results they would achieve by training 5 incredibly powerful Saiyans together. Their power simply had no comparison to anything they were about to face. For instance, Goku, Vegeta, and Raditz, who were now relatively on par with each other, had a level comparable to what they had in the original story right before the Tournament of Power, with the 3 having perfected and maximized Super Saiyan Blue. There's no need to explain that the tournament went off without a hitch, with Goku alone being more than enough to defeat all of Universe 6's opponents, winning with virtually no difficulty, not even needing to go beyond the regular Super Saiyan God state, even against Hit. After that tournament, Zeno appeared before the others, having the same interaction with Goku as in the original story, giving him a button to summon him or to transport him to Zeno's location whenever he wanted to play and be his friend. Following the tournament, once they realized that Nameless Planet was in fact a Super Dragon Ball, they summoned Super Shenron, or Zalama, and Beerus, in a rare act of kindness and generosity, requested that the dragon restore Universe 6's Earth for Champa. The Super Dragon granted that wish without the slightest issue. After these events, some time passed. Meanwhile, Zamasu, a Supreme Kai apprentice from Universe 10, learned of the existence of an entire mortal race capable of using God Ki, a realization that horrified him after hearing the accounts of Shin and Kibito when they visited so Kibito could train with him. Determined to remedy what he viewed as an abomination of nature, Zamasu decided to learn more about Goku and the other Saiyans, quickly grasping that while many used divine power, the strongest among them were Goku and his family and friends. Most notably, Goku seemed to be strongest of them all. At least that's what Zamasu believed, not bothering to investigate thoroughly and see what they were all really capable of. In his ignorance, he believed that a mere regular Super Saiyan God was the race's ultimate limit and nothing more. Thus, Zamasu set his Zero Mortals plan into motion, starting by killing Gowasu, taking his Potara earrings and the Time Rings, and traveling slightly into the future of that same timeline to gather all the Super Dragon Balls, to summon Zalama and wish to switch bodies with Goku. While Zamasu's wish was granted, Goku was working the land on his vegetable farm, stunned, disoriented, and confused to find that his body had completely changed, merging with that of a Supreme Kai. Goten, alarmed and frightened by what happened, went looking for his mother to show her what had occurred. In this story, Zamasu, now in Goku's body, would not immediately go to Earth, but to Planet Vegeta to annihilate the Saiyan race once again, giving the Earth's warriors ample time to process what had happened. Blinded by his hatred and bloodlust toward the mortals who used Divine Ki, Zamasu, or Goku Black, even forgot to kill the Supreme Kai first to eliminate Beerus, thinking only of his deep disgust that mortals had been granted divine power. Goku Black's arrival on Planet Vegeta struck the planet and its race like a tornado, confusing everyone who saw Goku wearing clothes he never wore before, acting, behaving, and speaking in a way that was nothing like the Saiyan they had grown accustomed to, especially when he started killing dozens of Saiyans in a genocidal spree. This alarmed and unsettled everyone, including Bardock and King Vegeta, who arrived shortly afterward, perplexed and momentarily stunned by the shock of seeing Kakarot, especially Bardock, committing such atrocities. Eventually, however, Bardock snapped out of it, joining forces with King Vegeta. As confusing as it was to see his son's face, it was obvious this was not his son if he was acting so differently. Both of them transformed into Super Saiyan Blue, instructing the remaining Saiyans to unite and also transform into Super Saiyan God. That would mark the end of Zamasu's foolish, megalomaniacal ambitions because that bloodthirsty Kai, so bent on killing mortals who use Divine Ki, failed to realize he was not yet capable of tapping into the full power of Goku's body. He could not even transform. Even if he could and had full access to Goku's power, he could never hope to defeat hundreds or even thousands of Divine Saiyans at once. Simply put, by carrying out his plan the way he did, Zamasu had completely lost all sense of reality. He was annihilated, destroyed by the combined efforts of Bardock, King Vegeta, and hundreds, if not thousands of Saiyans together. The situation that had just occurred was deeply confusing to all Saiyans, who could not find an explanation for what had happened until several warriors of Earth appeared, accompanied by a strange Supreme Kai dressed like a farmer, who breathed a sigh of relief at finally managing to use instant transmission correctly after several attempts in a body he did not recognize. Everyone was puzzled, but eventually the Supreme Kai explained that he was Goku, the real Goku. Along with him were Shin and Kibito, who explained to the Saiyans what was happening. They discovered that everything was Zamasu's doing, and were appalled that he had gone so far as to kill so many people, even his master Gowasu. They explained that Zamasu harbored a deep resentment and hatred toward the mortals of Universe 7 for being able to wield God Ki, and thus decided to initiate a genocidal rampage. Fortunately, his bloodlust and dark heart clouded his judgment, or perhaps he had even lost it completely, when he got the idiotic idea of confronting the entire Saiyan race using only Goku's body. Soon after, Beerus and Whis also arrived, enraged by what had happened and furious that Gowasu had been foolish enough to choose someone like Zamasu as his apprentice. They resolved to help restore order in the universe and rectify everything that had transpired, though undoubtedly it would be such a headache that Beerus might be tempted to go back to sleep once it was over. Thus, thanks to Shin and Whis, they gradually organized a way to fix several problems, starting with returning to Earth, summoning Shinron and asking him to reconstruct Goku's original body to replace the Zamasu body he currently occupied. It was a rather difficult request for the Earth's dragon, but one he eventually managed to fulfill. It was quite strange for Goku to swap bodies again, and although it was physically identical to his old one, the fact remained that his body was only a copy of the original, destroyed by the Saiyans when they killed Zamasu. Nonetheless, as it matched his body in every detail and retained all his power, Goku didn't mind much, even if it was an odd sensation to process. After that, with Whis' help, they were able to locate New Namek and reunite with Piccolo's race to ask for their help. Mori agreed without hesitation to assist those who had defeated Frieza, especially with the God of Destruction present. Using Porunga, they asked first to resurrect Gowasu, again a very difficult wish for Porunga, but one he ultimately granted, bringing Ramushi back to life in the process as well. Their second wish was to revive all the Saiyans who died during the battle with Zamasu or Goku Black. As for the third wish, Beerus made a very specific request: to completely erase and eradicate Zamasu's soul from the other world, ensuring he could never again cause trouble. While such a request would normally break Porunga's rules, the fear he felt toward Beerus forced him to violate one of his own limitations, lest he be erased by the Destroyer. Ultimately, that wish was also granted. Once the headache was over and Gowasu was chastised for his foolishness, everything was set right and everyone in Universe 7 could breathe a sigh of relief that this nightmare was over. Especially the Saiyan race and Goku, now that his body had been returned. Future Trunks, for his part, could also live a calm and secure life in his own timeline without ever needing to travel back to the past again. And so, despite the intense emotions everyone experienced with Zamasu's madness, shortly thereafter Zeno, bored by his loneliness and having no one to play with, not to mention using the argument that the universes had been a real nuisance recently with all this Zamasu business, summoned Goku to his palace, accompanied by the Grand Priest, Daishinkan, and Whis. Thus, Zeno declared that they would begin the Tournament of Power immediately, eager to see epic, amazing fights to entertain him. This time, although Goku was not really the one who caused the tournament to happen, he had no objection to the idea. Quite the contrary. Until the atmosphere turned darker when Zeno also declared that all universes that lost in the tournament would be erased, wiping the enthusiastic grin off Goku's face. Even so, the time had come for Universe 7 to recruit its team of 10 warriors. In this story, they had a huge advantage right from the start, because there was no need to hold an exhibition match for future Zeno, meaning much more time for the fighters to prepare and recruit. Moreover, they had more than enough warriors for such a challenge. Thus, the team consisted of Goku, Vegeta, Raditz, Bardock, King Vegeta, Gohan, Piccolo, Android 17, Android 18, who, although they weren't as close to the group in this story, still agreed to participate in exchange for a hefty sum of money, and finally, Granola, who, while he had long since been surpassed by most of the warriors, had continued training without pause over the years, making him decently powerful nonetheless. Recruitment was so quick, they still had one day left before the tournament. That was when Bardock proposed an absurdly crazy idea that could guarantee Universe 7's victory: to make use of that remaining day by having all 10 warriors train together in the hyperbolic time chamber under Whis' guidance. It was indeed a wild idea, but one that Beerus loved, practically forcing them to do it and sending Whis inside the chamber to train them. Whis, somewhat overwhelmed at having so many students at once, nonetheless agreed to do so. Hence, inside the hyperbolic time chamber, all of the warriors received a massive power boost. All of them except the androids even managed to master God Ki, at least in their base forms. For someone like Gohan, for example, this was an enormous benefit, especially in this story where he had never truly stopped training. Even if it wasn't much, it was still better than nothing, and so he hadn't lost all his power over time. Thanks to this intense and brutal training, many went beyond their limits, reaching new frontiers of power and even new forms. By the time they emerged from the chamber, they were more than ready to face whatever challenges awaited in the tournament. Beerus was now far more relaxed, confident his team could defeat all other universes. So, they all went to the World of Void, and shortly thereafter, the Tournament of Power began. Or rather, the Tournament of Massacre. It seemed that the training had borne fruit, perhaps too much fruit. Goku and the other Saiyans thought, thirsting for a challenge they now realized they likely wouldn't find here. They had become so absurdly strong that there was nothing the other universes could do against the mighty and intimidating Universe 7. Even though they tried to hold back and take it easy, at least to get some minimal enjoyment out of fighting such weak opponents, the sheer display of raw power from Universe 7 forced Jiren to intervene right away to fight them in hopes of saving his universe. But Jiren quickly found himself disappointed to discover that they could all withstand his powerful attacks without much trouble. Eventually, Goku decided to fight Jiren alone, leaving Top and the rest to Vegeta and the others, something that annoyed them a bit, knowing Goku was getting the best matchup this tournament had to offer. Although they realized even that wouldn't be enough, they kept their hopes up for a good fight. Jiren would soon learn the truth when, before his confused and terrified eyes, he witnessed Goku transform into a form beyond anything shown thus far: Ultra Instinct, specifically Perfected Ultra Instinct. During that year of training with 9 rivals and with Whis as a teacher, Goku had finally managed to reach and voluntarily control Ultra Instinct, though it was still an extremely draining form he could not maintain for very long. Without further ado, he faced Jiren and quickly dominated the Universe 11 warrior with absolute ease, so much so that Goku no longer found it fun. Disheartened at not finding a real challenge in the tournament, he decided to eliminate Jiren immediately, beating him swiftly and unceremoniously. Meanwhile, Vegeta defeated Top, while Bardock, King Vegeta, and the others took care of the remaining universes, especially Universe 11, crowning the overwhelmingly powerful Universe 7 as the victor, with not a single member getting knocked off the stage, much to the astonishment of Zeno and the other gods. The Omni King was somewhat disappointed it was all so short, but so it went. In any case, after the tournament, they summoned Super Shenron as a prize. It was no surprise that the entire group agreed to resurrect all the erased universes. This relieved and satisfied Zeno's curiosity, as he wanted to see if these mortals still had the potential to evolve as universes. That selfless, disinterested wish was proof enough in his eyes. Hence, the tournament concluded, leaving everyone with a somewhat bitter taste. Still, at least they were pleased everything had turned out well, and they had no doubt more true challenges would arise in the future. This altruistic act of the other warriors, choosing to bring back their rival universes, opened King Vegeta's eyes. After so many years, he felt a strange and unpleasant remorse for a past deed he was eager to set right. He asked his son and Bardock's sons if they would be willing to accompany him on a journey to find someone who might be too powerful for him alone. Intrigued by his proposal, they finally heard King Vegeta reveal how he had once, through cruelty, envy, and fear of his own son's strength, betrayed one of his most loyal subjects, exiling him and his son to a horrid planet hostile to any living being. If they were strong enough, and King Vegeta did not doubt it, they had likely survived all this time. Now, even knowing that these Saiyans would despise him with every fiber of their being and demand his head, he still intended to atone for his past crimes by rescuing and saving Broly and Paragus. Naturally, all the Saiyans agreed to join him, excited to meet a new Saiyan, one who might finally provide the fight and challenge they had been waiting for all this time. And that is the end of this story.